Thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate it very much. I was having a wonderful conversation with the True Source, and I was asking, what can I share? And one of the items that God, the True Source, said I should share with each one of you is patterns. And it's really interesting. We all have patterns in our life. You know, we have rules and regulations, and it has to be done this way and this way and this way. But we have patterns like you get up in the morning, perhaps you have a cup of coffee or go to the restroom, then you have a cup of coffee, then you have a shower, then maybe you read the newspaper or whatever it is. But you do this pattern over and over and over again. Or you may turn on your computer and look at Facebook or look at your emails or whatever it is. But there are more patterns than that going on in our life. And these patterns begin from the very day that you incarnate into your body. And these patterns are based on needs, fears, desires, blocks, insecurities, whatever they may be. And let's just take a look at it. And so there is a pattern that on a certain time, at a certain day, you like to go to a certain restaurant. That's a pattern. But I want to talk a little bit more about life patterns. And life patterns has to do with how do you handle your life? And that's so important. How do you handle your life? What is your pattern? So when a fear comes up, you may run and hide, you may close your door, you may go into a cave, you may drink, you may eat, you may do whatever you do in your patterns. And perhaps when you meet people, you have a pattern. Do you shrink? Do you speak up? Are you shy? Do you run? Do you hide? And how do you handle criticism? All these patterns began from the day you were born, as I said, and throughout life they became changed, enhanced, and now they became a modus operandi for you. And I want each one of you to think about, what are your patterns in life? How do you handle stress? Do you eat? Do you run? Do you hide? Do you worry about every little thing? We are on and in the ebb and flow of life. And the reason we all came here is severalfold. One of them is to do our mission and goal on the human plane. The other is to do our mission and goal on the spiritual plane. But the other part of it is to experience life. And how do we experience life? Well, one of our patterns is our rules. I remember my father's rule, one of them, you borrow a tool, put it back where you found it. One of his rules are eating at dinner, you were not allowed to talk. You weren't allowed to say anything. And then I go to my son's house, and he starts off the dinner time, each one of the kids and every adult has to say, what did they do in their life today that brought them joy? And they have wonderful conversations at dinner. Look at the two different patterns. You never talk when you're at dinner. My son, you chat and talk, and it's family night and time to be together. So what do you use for your pattern when you get together with friends? Usually you join a friend. This one has a good sense of humor. This is a good cook. This is a fun person to be around with. I enjoy being on their boat, whatever it is. But what's important for us is these patterns, no matter how joyful they are or not joyful, control and manipulate us. In other words, we fall into a set regulation or rules that they have to be done in a specific way. And if they're not done in a specific way, then we're unhappy or we're disappointed. So the first thing is to break your patterns. The best thing you should do is whatever you do the first 3 things in the morning, you do it opposite. So if you go to the restroom in the morning, have a cup of coffee and turn on the computer, then have a cup of coffee, turn on the computer, and go to the restroom. And every 3 or 4 days, just rotate and keep changing that. Why would you want to do that? Because what happens is you have to learn not to have any expectations. That's what's important. Because you see, expectations are what's controlling your life. So if your expectation is that you're going to go to a certain place for dinner, it's going to be the best steak you've ever had because you like going there and you feel comfortable, and one day you go there and they're closed or they don't have the food that you want, you get very disappointed. So you set out this expectation, it has to be this way, and this way. When you become regulated in life, you don't grow, because breaking patterns is all about growing. It's all about moving forward. It's all about healing. It's all about empowerment. I've been on my spiritual path for a very long time. Now, we're all very spiritual, as I've said before, but I've been on my spiritual path, and I'm just trying to remember, in excess of 40 years. That's a long time. And my whole goal was to keep learning and growing and learning and growing. So one of my patterns was never to get stuck. That's positive. My other pattern was, I don't know if I want to work this hard. I don't know if I want to do this. I want it all to come easy. I don't want to have to work hard. Why can't I just wake up in the morning and achieve all these things? And yet, that's one pattern that's limiting. The other pattern that I use is, I want to know it all. I want to learn everything. Have an insatiable appetite to grow, to learn about more spirituality, to move forward. Because the truth is, if we're stuck here and we know everything, then we could become more stuck, and what's the use of being here? If you know everything, you experienced everything, then why be here at all? On the other hand, if you look at, I've got to break my patterns that are limiting and establish new patterns that help me grow and move forward. So the pattern can be like, I want to grow and learn more, period. How limiting is that? In my opinion, it's not limiting. Or I desire to make new spiritual friends. And then you get into a lively conversation and you learn and grow. There's not one conversation that I can remember in my life that I have not learned one thing, just something new, one little thing. It could be 2 hours, and I'm same stuff, but then I learned something and I went, wow, this is so powerful. And each one of you are on your own spiritual path, and each one of you have got stuck into some limiting patterns, and each one of you, at one time or another, have been fearful of moving ahead. I remember one time I had a new student, and she joined, and we talked, and I said, well, I want to share with everybody about putting up a bubble of protection. She goes, what's that for? I said, well, it protects you against negativity. Oh, well, if I do that, then I'm going to have a lot of negativity. I quit. I don't want to be here. And it's like her pattern was so fearful of any change. What she didn't realize is we're all surrounded by negativity 24/7. Doesn't mean that it's going to affect us, but having what I call a bubble of protection, it enhances your protection, helps you to grow, helps you to move forward, and stops your limiting behavior and patterns. So let's look at each one of your own individual lives. Spend a moment and think about, what pattern do I have at this moment in my life that is limiting me? What is it? Could be a fear, could be a doubt, could be an insecurity, could be a lack of self-worth, self-esteem, whatever that pattern is. Take a look at it. I have a clock in front of me, and I'm going to be quiet for 2 minutes. Please stay on. By now, I'm sure you have discovered at least one or more limiting patterns. So I'd like you to spend about a half a minute asking, what purpose does it serve? So I'll be quiet for 30 seconds and then we'll continue. All right, by now, you've discovered what the purpose is. The question I want you all to think about is, does it really work well for you? Is it limiting or is it enhancing? Is it a fear or is it a doubt? Or is it a block? And if we understand patterns in our life, it's what keeps us kind of stuck in our life. And yet a pattern can be enhancing if we let it to be freewheeling. So what does that mean? And again, I use the process. I desire that I learn about spirituality. I want to grow and learn each and every moment. I want to grow each and every second, year, month, whatever it is. And you will. And remember, this is a little aside. I throw a dinner party every 3 months. And it starts at 3, believe it or not. Has hors d'oeuvres, 4-course meal, and it goes on till 7, 8 o'clock, sometimes 10 o'clock at night. Different courses of wine, food. I do the whole 10 yards. Because it's a fun thing to do, to share. And I never know what I'm going to make. And sometimes I'll semi-follow a recipe, and sometimes I don't. Because I have the pattern of knowing that if I listen to my inner guidance, I'm going to make one hell of a meal, and it's going to be a lot better than any kind of recipe. And I guess it kind of falls in the family because, as you know, some of you, my son owns several restaurants and is a wonderful chef. But I remember one of my neighbors who came over, he's a student, who prides himself being an expert on everything. And I made a ricotta cheesecake. And to make a ricotta cheesecake, it's not something that takes 5 or 10 minutes. It took quite a while. Anyway, so we're eating it, and he goes, "This is a grainy cheesecake. It doesn't taste good." And I looked at him and I said, "Michael, this is a ricotta cheesecake. It's not a cream cheese." Oh, I don't think he knew what I was talking about. But you see, his pattern is that a cheesecake should always taste that way. Now I know this is an oversimplification. So whether he was disappointed or not, I could have been hurt. But I realized that, his ego was in the way. He isn't the master chef that he purports to be. But I always, when he puts on the party, I always compliment him on the food. Because my pattern is to always encourage people. And I want you to look at your patterns and say, what do I do to encourage myself? What do I do to encourage my family or friends or relatives or mother or father or children? And what are my limiting or self-limited patterns? You see, we are all in a state of flux right now, and that state of flux is we're being asked by God, the true source, to change our patterns and change our lives. To get out of old ways, old habits, old patterns, old feelings, and all old emotions. Many of you over the next 10 years are going to be acquiring new spiritual skills. Many of you are going to be acquiring new friends and shedding old friends. And that's a great pattern, change, because change helps you to grow. And there are people around us that still live in the past. That's their pattern. And I had a friend, oh, I used to be wealthy. I used to. I got so sick and tired of hearing it over and over and over again. It's like, and what I did was call upon God, the true source, and said, all those people that are limiting, that are holding me back, or depressing me, or whatever it may be, that they gently, lovingly, and caringly leave my life. And they just disappear. But the universe says there's no such thing as a vacuum. So when one door closes, another door opens. And in this case, when you ask for new friends, new jobs, new relationships, whatever it may be, that means that will come into your life. And it'll be at the perfect time for you, and it will be the right frequency and vibration to bring about love and joy and happiness. Everything I do in my life, well, almost, I should say, I turn over for God, the true source, or ask for God, the true source, inner guidance. And it always works out wonderfully. It's positive. What we need to realize is that we have to be in the flow of life and give up our patterns that are limiting. And I'm asking each one of you, through this next 7 days, when you call in next week, you are going to experience limiting patterns, blocks that are stopping you from moving forward. How many times do we think about ourselves like, well, we should get a new job, or we should do this, but I'm 50, I'm 60, I'm 40, I got all these bills, I can't do this, I can't do that, I can't take a risk. And yet, those people who take the risk, they find magic happening into their life and many positive changes. I remember when my first child was born, and I was one of these independent people in marketing and sales, and companies knew it. And it was interesting because if they appreciated what I do and what I did for them, they would constantly promote me and give me raises. But I remember my first child was my son, and I went, uh-oh, I have all this responsibility. I can't afford to lose a job. I can't afford to change jobs. And I got stuck in that for about a year or two, and I went, no, I am unlimited. That sound familiar, everybody? I can achieve anything. And then I worked for many different companies and learned a lot, well paid, well compensated, traveled all over the United States. And then I approached my spiritual path. God, the true source, assisted me with it. I functioned well, and everything went great. Traveled half the world as an international consultant. It was just one joyous thing after another. And so here I am in another phase with all of you, and my book is about to be delivered shortly, and written a book to share with all of you from my mission and goals. My pattern now is to grow. My pattern is now to open up each one of you to spirituality. My pattern is to empower you. My pattern is to show you how you are unlimited and can achieve anything in your life. Those are the things that I want to instill in each one of you so that you can sit there and pick and choose whatever you so desire. And you go, well, been there, done that. I think I'll try something else. And the door will open up and you'll achieve it. Because you see, in this life, the only pattern you should have is growth. The only pattern you should have is know that you are unlimited. The only pattern you should know is that you are here for the experience of life, and you're going to take that experience. And your legacy is to share it with your children, your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren, friends, and relatives, because you are unlimited. So before I close, I would like each one of you to remember that you're going to review your patterns and realize which ones are limiting and which ones are growing in your life, and choose and just say, I don't need this pattern anymore. I've learned it. It's time for me to move forward. I open up a pattern of growth, of new experiences, of perfect health, of joy, of happiness, whatever you desire. And as I remind all of you, you are unlimited. And don't forget, each night, before you go to sleep, look into that mirror and say, I am unlimited. I am unlimited. I am unlimited.